Story 1. The Employee-Only Door. My name is Kelsey. I'm 21, and at the time of this story, I worked at a Walmart just outside a small town. I didn't go to school full-time, so I took whatever hours they gave me. And most weeks, that meant closing shifts and the occasional overnight back when our store was still open late enough for the parking lot to look like a gas station at 2 a.m. That night, my shift was 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. If you've never worked that kind of shift, there's a weird point around midnight where the store goes from busy to wrong. Like the lights get harsher, the air feels colder, and every little sound, shopping cart wheels, a distant beeping scanner, echoes farther than it should. There were a handful of employees working, a couple people in the front, a team lead, and maybe 4 stockers spread out across the store. You'd think that would feel safer. But the building is so big that you can go an hour without seeing anyone you actually know. I started in apparel, zoning shelves and folding shirts that were going to be destroyed again by morning. I kept one earbud in, not both, because my supervisor hated it, but at night they didn't really check. Around 11:30, a man came into the men's section. He didn't look homeless or drunk or anything obvious, just ordinary. Mid-30s, baseball cap, plain hoodie, hands in his pockets. He asked if we had a specific brand of jeans in a different size. I did the usual polite thing. I told him we had what was on the rack and we didn't have extra sizes in the back for that brand. He nodded, said thanks. But when he turned away, he didn't actually leave. He stood at the end of the aisle, just staring at the wall of jeans like he was reading something that wasn't there. I went back to folding and forgot about him. A while later, the store started thinning out. Most customers were gone. The front end looked empty. The overhead music felt louder because there weren't enough people to absorb it. It was around 1 a.m. when my supervisor radioed me to help in small appliances. A pallet had been brought out and they wanted shelves stocked fast. So I grabbed a cart and started pushing boxes down an aisle. That's when I saw him again. I noticed him because he was standing one aisle over, visible through a gap in the shelves. Just his face, half hidden between boxes. He was watching me. And the second I made eye contact, he looked away like he'd been caught doing something embarrassing. At first, I tried to talk myself out of it. It's Walmart. People wander. People zone out. People are weird. But then I realized something that made my stomach tighten. His hands were empty. If he'd been shopping for hours, he should have had something. A drink, a snack, a random item, anything. He had nothing. I kept working, but I got that prickly feeling on the back of my neck like I was being studied. I changed aisles on purpose, like I was just moving on, and I watched for him. He'd appear, then disappear, always empty-handed. I decided I didn't want to be alone in the back corner of appliances, so I pushed my cart toward grocery, where the lights are brighter, and at least you can see the front end in the distance. I ended up in dairy. There's a cooler door back there that employees go in and out of, and it's loud inside. The fans, the refrigeration hum, the metal carts clanking. It's the kind of place where you could yell and no one would hear you. I went in to check dates and load crates. 10 minutes into it, I heard the cooler door open. It's a heavy door. It makes a distinct sound. A dull thump, then a hiss. I didn't think much of it. Another employee, maybe. But the footsteps didn't sound like an employee's quick pace. They were slow, and they didn't go deeper into the cooler. They stopped near the entrance. I turned my head and looked past stacks of milk crates. Through a narrow gap, I saw the man. He was inside the cooler, and he was smiling like he'd finally found what he was looking for. It took my brain a second to catch up. I remember feeling stupid because my first thought was, maybe he's lost. Like a customer wandered into an employee-only area by mistake. But no one wanders into the dairy cooler by mistake. You have to pull the door open and step past the employees-only sign. I backed up quietly, pushing myself behind a rack of pallets. I didn't run. Running feels loud. Running feels like permission. I crouched down and grabbed the nearest big box, eggs, of all things, and dragged it in front of me like a shield. I watched his shoes. I watched them move slightly, then stop. Then I heard him speak. Not loudly, just enough to carry in the cold air. Hello? I didn't answer. He didn't sound angry. He sounded entertained. Like it was a game. I stayed still for what felt like forever. I kept telling myself he'd get bored and leave. Eventually, I couldn't stand it anymore. I lifted my head just a little to see if the doorway was clear, and he was right there. He was standing on the other side of the box, leaned forward like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. That's when the fear hit full force. I screamed. His smile vanished instantly. His hand shot out toward my mouth like he'd done it before, like he knew the move. I shoved the egg box toward him. The cardboard buckled, and eggs started cracking on the floor. He jerked back just enough for me to sprint past him. I ran through the cooler door and into the back hallway, almost slipping because my shoes were wet from the cooler floor. I didn't stop until I found another employee, a stalker named Manny. I grabbed his arm so hard he flinched. I told him, "There's a man in the dairy cooler." Manny looked confused for a second, then his face changed. He asked me what the guy looked like. Before I could answer, the man walked out of the back hallway like he belonged there. Calm, hands in pockets, like nothing had happened. He looked at us and said, "Sorry, I'm from corporate." That's what he said, from corporate. He said he was checking if employees were actually working because overnights get lazy. Manny, God bless him, looked like he almost believed it. The man smiled at Manny and said, "She screamed. I didn't expect that." I said, "You tried to cover my mouth." He didn't even deny it. He just said, "I was trying to avoid a scene." Then he turned and walked away like the conversation was over. Manny asked him, "What's your name?" The guy said, without turning around, "Tom," and he disappeared into the aisles. The next day, I called a manager I trusted and asked if corporate ever visits at 2 a.m. She laughed like it was the stupidest question she'd ever heard. Then she stopped laughing when she heard my voice. They checked cameras. The footage showed him following me across departments for almost 2 hours. Not shopping, not browsing, just trailing me, pausing whenever I paused, moving whenever I moved. And the most disturbing part? At one point, he stood at the entrance to the dairy cooler for several minutes, like he was waiting for the exact moment no one else was nearby. They filed a police report. I never heard if he was caught, but I did move to day shifts after that. And even now, years later, if I walk into a grocery store cooler and I hear the door open behind me, I don't assume it's an employee anymore. Story 2, the last item on the shelf. This happened the Thursday before Black Friday. Our Walmart was open late, and the electronics section looked like a feeding frenzy even though it was close to midnight. I wasn't an employee. I was just there to grab something on sale, headphones I think, and get out. But I ended up in the laptop aisle because the deals were already posted, and the display case had one laptop left with a big yellow sticker on it. The last one. I picked it up. The second I did, a man stepped into the aisle like he'd been waiting behind the end cap. He was big, tall, and heavy, and looked dirty in a way that wasn't just work clothes, like he hadn't washed in a while. His eyes were red, not sleepy red, angry red. He said, "That's mine." I laughed nervously and said, "Sorry, it's the last one." He stepped closer, close enough that I smelled him, sweat and something sour. He said, "I need it. Give it to me." People always say, trust your instincts, but instincts in public are complicated, because part of you thinks you'll look dramatic. Part of you thinks it's just an awkward moment. So I did what people do. I tried to walk away. He followed me, not screaming yet, just loudly repeating, "Give it to me," like he was building a crowd on purpose. A couple people looked over. Someone muttered, "Ignore him." I got in a checkout line. I kept my eyes forward. The man stood behind me, not in line, just behind me, staring. I could feel it. When the cashier rang me up, I paid fast. I didn't look at the man. I just left. My house was quiet when I got home. Everyone was asleep. I didn't want to wake anyone up because it felt dumb, like a weird guy at Walmart. I sat in the living room and opened the laptop box. 10 minutes later, the motion light on the side of our house turned on. We lived near a small wooded patch, so I told myself it was a raccoon or something. Still, I checked the front window. The driveway looked normal. Then my car alarm started going off. That snapped me fully awake. I grabbed my keys and hit the button to shut it off from inside. It didn't stop, so I stepped onto the porch and hit the button again. The alarm stopped immediately, and that's when I noticed a car parked on the street in front of our house. It wasn't there earlier. We lived in a quiet neighborhood where everyone parked in their driveway, not the street. I stared at the car and saw someone sitting inside it. I couldn't see their face clearly, but I saw the faint glow of a phone screen. I went back inside and locked the door. My heart was going crazy at this point. I told myself to breathe, to be rational. Then I heard the front steps creak. Someone was walking up. My mom's bedroom door was upstairs. I ran up and knocked softly, whispering her name because my voice felt too loud. She opened the door immediately, like she'd been awake. I told her, "Someone's outside." She came down with me. She looked through the peephole and her entire body stiffened. She whispered, "Don't open the door." I looked through the peephole. It was him, the Walmart guy, standing on our porch like he lived there. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't moving much, just waiting. Then the doorknob turned. Once, twice, like he was testing it. He knocked, not a polite knock, a heavy, slow knock. My mom whispered, "I'm calling the police." While she was on the phone, the knocking stopped. That silence was worse, because it meant he was still there, but he'd decided not to announce himself anymore. A few minutes later, there was a loud crash from the back of the house. Glass. My mom screamed. I ran toward the den and saw the window shattered, cold air pouring in. I locked the den door and stood with my back to it because I didn't know what else to do. Everything felt unreal, like I was in the wrong version of my own house. Then, outside, we heard a siren briefly wail. Blue lights flashed across the walls. The police arrived fast. I opened the front door and pointed them to the den window. They went around back. And they found him. Not running away. Not hiding in the bushes. He was inside the den, crouched behind our couch like he'd been there before. He screamed threats when they grabbed him. Not random insults, specific threats about what he was going to do to me. Like he'd spent the drive from Walmart planning it. I pressed charges. I still don't know how he found my house. Maybe he followed my car. Maybe he saw the neighborhood direction and guessed. Maybe it was luck. But every Black Friday season, when people joke about Walmart being chaotic, I think about him standing on my porch, quietly turning the doorknob, and I don't laugh. Story 3. The cameras went static. This story happened when I was working weekend night shifts as a stalker. The store was closed to the public, which sounds safer. It's not. When the store is closed, it gets too quiet. You can hear the building settle. You can hear the humming of coolers. You can hear your own footsteps like someone following you. It was just 3 of us in the building. Me and 2 other stalkers. No security, no greeter, no customers. My section was electronics, which is near the front but still far enough that you can't see the doors. Around 2 a.m., I saw someone walk past the end of my aisle. That wouldn't have been weird, except the person was wearing all black. We didn't wear black. We wore bright vests. I peeked around the shelf. No one there. I called out my coworkers' names. No answer. I went back to stalking, trying to tell myself I imagined it. Then a crash happened a few aisles down. I ran over and saw a bicycle knocked off its hook. The hook was still in place. It looked like someone had yanked the bike down on purpose. That's when the fear started to settle in. Not panic, not screaming fear. Just a heavy, slow dread. Because someone was in the store with us who shouldn't be. As I walked back toward electronics, I heard a sound I can only describe as a laugh. Not a normal laugh. More like someone exhaling through their teeth, amused at the idea that I was looking. It came from the next aisle over. I rounded the shelf and saw him. A man dressed in black, standing at the end of the aisle. His back was turned, but his head was angled just enough that I could see half his face. One eye, watching me. The second I saw him, he ran. Not toward me, away, deeper into the store. I didn't chase him. I went looking for my coworkers. I found one of them in apparel and told him quietly, "Someone's in here." He believed me immediately, and that scared me more, because it meant he'd felt something too. We didn't have walkies. Our phones barely had service inside. I needed the bathroom badly, and the employee bathroom was in the warehouse section. I hated going back there because it's a maze of pallets and shadows, but I went anyway. I locked myself into a stall. The bathroom door opened. I heard footsteps enter. Then nothing. No sink, no toilet, no sound of a person using the bathroom. Just presence. I said, "Who is that?" No answer. Then the laughing again. Quiet. Close. A face appeared in the crack of the stall door. Not the whole face, just one eye, watching through the gap. Then a whisper started. It didn't sound like words I could understand. Just breathy, wet whispering, like someone practicing a sentence without speaking it out loud. I remembered I had my coworker's number saved from a group text. I called him instantly. I didn't try to be quiet. I wanted the person to know someone else was coming. I said loud and clear, "Get to the bathroom right now." The whispering stopped. The eye stayed there for another second. Then footsteps ran out. My coworker arrived within 30 seconds. He didn't see anyone. We stayed together the rest of the shift. Safety in numbers. The next day, I texted my supervisor and told him everything. When he finally responded, he said something that made my stomach drop. He said the camera screens were all static that night. Not, the cameras were off. Not, the cameras malfunctioned. Static, like snow on an old television. And nobody had touched the system. No proof, no footage, no way to identify who was in the building. Just a night where we were being watched. And the cameras, the one thing that should have been watching back, saw nothing. I never worked a night shift there again. And even now, if I'm alone in a store and I hear a laugh that doesn't belong, I don't look for a joke, I look for an exit.